The Life of Death by Nightmare Darkness. Read by Deathlight. Chapter 14. The Last Push. The room was deathly silent as Celestia stood, approaching Angel Wings. I pulled my hood back and frowned after the angel, and stroked her head. Discord stood up and approached Celestia, but stopped short when I looked up from the main. I had seen not even a moment ago had vanished. In her place stood an alicorn made of pure fury. "Celestia?" Discord said, and her eyes shifted onto him, and he gulped. "Don't do anything hasty," he almost pleaded. She looked at me and closed her eyes. "Discord, look after Angel Wings. Grape, come with me, we're gonna go reclaim the heavens," she said coldly. She stood up and I saw a flitter of a wisp of purple energy escape her eyes, as they flashed red and green. I stood beside Celestia, and the air around us sparked and crackled. A flash of blinding light enveloped us, and the air burst as we appeared on the appropriate of the White Castle, and below Mary a clean white scene, with splashes of red, brown, and silver. It broke my heart to see what must have been a beautiful place, of tranquility defiled by conflict. Poor Bigasai landed before Celestia and bowed instantly. "Your Highness, we didn't expect," he began, but was cut off by Celestia's stare. "Where is their leader?" Celestia said tactfully. "Guarded by legions of warped souls, and in possession of weapons that made him difficult to deal with," he said, sounding frustrated. "How is this fear of light?" she inquired. "He's making his way towards it," he said unhappily. Celestia's eyes shifted in several directions, as she thought of scenarios before looking at me, and was about to issue an order when a loud explosion captured their attention. By the destroyed gates, there were angels that had been holding what they could of the line. A large creature made up of what seemed to be a mass of heads. "Is that a Hydra?" I said incredulously. "We won't be able to hold the line without added firepower," the stallion said angrily. Coolly, Celestia took a deep breath. "Grape with me. Dive short, you take a contingent, and try to slow down the leader, and we will be there as soon as we are done." Dive Short nodded his head, and took the other angels with him, heading to a large tower. I looked back at Celestia, and her horn began to glow, and the light shot forth from the sky, and struck the ground in front of her, and she pulled it free. And out of the light materialized a beautiful spear, along with the armor forming to her frame. Celestia stood there, not a wise mentor, but a warrior of light. She opened her wings and she was off the wall, speeding towards the Hydra. I followed after her quickly, kind of feeling inadequate compared to her. She struck the ground, causing a rippling effect, knocking all the enemies in the 50-meter radius to the ground. The angels cried their cheers as she pulled their spear out of the ground, and charged at the Hydra as it spat fire and clawed at the angels. I dove down and removed a head that fell limp to the ground, and after a moment it sprang back to life, sprouting two more snapping, snarling heads. "Crap!" I said, but dove down, landing beside Celestia. Standing beside her as warp souls converged on us, I began to hack and slash, defending her flank and my side. She was doing the same, and it was an effective fighting force. The Hydra then focused fully on the pair of us. I looked up just in time to see a pair of jaws descending on Celestia. My eyes widened and my body moving quicker than my thoughts, pushing Celestia aside. Putting myself in her spot, the teeth ripped into my flesh, and I screamed as it flung me into the air as I spiraled like a rag doll. I could see its gaping maw ready to catch me, and I blinked. "So, this is how I was gonna die. Again." I could see Celestia look up at me with terrified eyes, and I lost sight of her as I descended into the darkness in the mouth of the Hydra. It was dark, smelled, and hot. I landed in what must have been the stomach because I could feel the acids begin to eat me away. There was moans of angels that had met the same fate as I had. I looked for my scythe, but I couldn't find it. I could feel it, like that feeling you get when you know something is watching you. I called it to me. The beast began to rumble and shake violently as I called my scythe even louder. Light broke through above me as my scythe ripped open the back of the Hydra. A cry of triumph could be heard from the hole that my scythe was made. I climbed up and bursted forth from the crevice of the dead Hydra. The fresh air I gulped in. "Oh my Celestia! Dear sweet air!" I cried out as an angel landed and helped me out of the gash. Celestia stood not far and had a smile on her face, and I couldn't hold it in, and I ruffed my hay. My body shuddered, and I felt weak for a moment before I flapped my wings, and made it over to Celestia, who was now issuing orders. "Decide to go for a Trojan horse kind of attack? Bit unorthodox," she joked. "Ha ha, I didn't want you to get eaten was all," I said, my eyes half-lidded. "And I thank you. I was scared for you there. And then I remembered you were death." She looked up to the tower. "We need to get up there. There is still a vast army outside the gates. We have a brief respite, but the battle is far from over. But if he gets the sphere, it will still the power from the angels and myself," she said worried, and looked at me. "Let us go." She spread her wings and I spread mine out and followed after her. We arrived at the bottom of the tower, where Dive Shore and a contingent made their last stand and lost. Celestia landed and looked at them with a look of utter sadness. Dive Shore's eyes flickered open. As his haggard breathing became louder, his eyes found Celestia. "Your Highness, I have failed. Forgive me." He said as tears poured from his eyes. "You did your best, that's all I ever asked," she said calmly. Dive Shore smiled as his eyes went dark. "Vedra will pay," Celestia said angrily. She turned towards the doors, and before she could open them, a loud earth-shattering crash was heard, and the light of heaven turned dank gray. As Celestia collapsed, her eyes widened. "He's at the sphere," she said in shock. She looked up at me and pleaded. "Grape, I beseech thee to end him, and bring back the light to us all. Grape, you're our only hope," she said as her eyes closed, and mine widened in alarm. "She can't be dead." I felt her side, and her heartbeat was still there. I looked at the gates and stood in front of them, my scythe faithfully beside me. "Don't worry, Princess. I will end him and restore balance," I said to her, not caring if she heard me, because I was going to do this for me. I opened the doors and entered the staircase that winded all the way up to the top of the tower. Speeding up the staircase, I burst out into the first floor, where what looked like hundreds of warp souls stood between me and Vedora. He turned and smiled. "Good to see you here, Death. Took you long enough. But really, you were the only thing that may stop me. After I defeat you, I can't be stopped." He looked different somehow. His features were more like my own now. Similar to Death, but not quite Death itself. I looked at all the warp souls. I had a mad idea, but I couldn't take all these enemies alone. It was then I heard the whistle of several hoofbeats begin me, and I looked behind me, and my eyes must have been deceiving me. "Tootsie Pop?" I said, surprised. The old Death smiled as he often did, with his Hawaiian shirt, a vast difference from the scene around us. "Hey kiddo, seems like you need a little bit of help," he said as he stepped beside me. I hadn't even seen his fishing pole, but he slammed it into the ground, and it turned black. A long blade seemed to grow out of it. His Hawaiian shirt flowed over him and became another black cloak. 15 other ponies that seemed like normal ponies from all walks of life began to appear beside us, each at one time, Death, all sworn to uphold the balance. I looked left and then right, raising my scythe. "For Equestria!" And the yells of Death echoed up the rift of the world. Fighting tooth and hoof, I bashed, cut, cleaved, and kicked my way into a flurry before making it close to Vedra. He stood there stoic, unfazed by the display of the Death corpse. I healed and leaped at him, my scythe raised, coming down on him. He moved quickly and batted my scythe away, and slammed me with his shield, sending me flying back. I was able to stop myself in the air. Looking down at him, he seemed to kneel and then launch himself at me. He sped at me like an arrow shot from a bow. I lifted my scythe just in time to deflect the blow away from me. The energy from the blow caused the clouds to separate. Lashing out with my hoof, I kicked him in the jaw, causing him to spin, and gave me an opening to cleave him in two. I swung, but he was able to twist his body, using his shield to deflect the blow. The exchange between our blows were violent and shook the air between us. The battle below still raged on, and I floated across from him. "You know this is a fruitless battle. I still have many souls to do my bidding. You can't win," he said, shaking his head with a shrug. "You think because you have an army, you can win?" I started. To prove my point, a horn pierced the air, making us both look out over the gates of heaven, and an army of demon ponies snarled, whooped, and hollered as they stood beneath Lucifer. He smiled and nodded his head, and his horde of Hades was unleashed on the unsuspecting Warp Soul's army. I smiled but also hoped I did not have to fight off Lucifer after fighting Vedra. He looked back at me, his calm visage cracking, as he seemed to tremble with a seething rage. "You see that the whole world is against you. Even death cannot stand against the will of creation," I said pointedly as I repositioned my scythe. "I will end you, here and now," I proclaimed. He leered at me a moment, and then charged me with his shield up first, and I attacked with the same aggression, yelling for this one last confrontation. I slowed down just enough where he swung his sickle, where it skinned my neck, cutting the robe, and I swung my scythe sideways, and I felt it connect with his side, making him cry out in anguish. I put my weight behind it and finally sheared in two, causing him to swing wildly at me. He struck me in the face with his shield, and it sent me reeling. I crashed in the ground as he also did. The warp souls began to act oddly as the hold on them slipped. I stood there and the fighting stopped, as the souls seemed to come out of a hazy dream. I approached Vedra, looking down at him with mixed feelings. Anger, remorse, pity, sadness. He was my enemy. He had a reason for what he did, but it didn't excuse him. He was breathing heavily as he looked up at me, and smiled with bloody teeth. "You think you won this day?" He chuckled and coughed. He clung to his sickle and shield still. "If I can't have the world, I'll make sure, Death, you can't live in it," he said as he closed his eyes and his body glowed. "Look out!" Tootsie shouted and shielded me from the explosion. That sent us both crashing into the ground several meters away. The world was spinning, and I was hugged by Tootsie still. Everywhere hurt, but he stayed on top of me. "Thanks, you can get off of me now," I said as his body shuddered. "Sorry, kiddo." He sounded sad. I knew shifted to see the sickle protruding from his back. My eyes widened. No, Tootsie, hold on, you're gonna be okay." My words died in my throat as he shook his head. "This is the end for me. You've turned out to be a great death. Never lose who you are, Grape. Always be fair." He said as my vision became blurry, and a warm feeling of his tears that rolled off his cheek. His body then felt heavy and I cried out in anguish. As the fellow death helped Tootsie off of me, but I held on to him, sobbing like a child. The light returned and the angels stood uneasily beside their demonic counterparts. As Lucifer and Celestia were talking about rebuilding for both realms, I came down from the tower, as the others helped bring Tootsie Pop's body. As Celestia saw him and her eyes watered. "Oh, Tootsie Pop, you always did work too hard," she said as Lucifer had a look of sorrow as well. The sickle that had killed him was removed and now sat on his body. Celestia took it and examined it. "I'll have this dealt with." She pulled out a cloth and wrapped it around the blade and looked at Lucifer. "I hope to see improvements about dealing with your subordinates," she said pointedly. He seemed to be hurt but brushed off the jab. "Things have been put into place," he said and looked to his demons. "Back to Hades," he said and several nodded, going up in smoke and fiery inferno. "Where is the shield? Wasn't there 2 pieces?" Celestia asked. "Yes, but it must have been destroyed by the explosion," I said unsure, and I could tell Celestia shared my doubt. Lucifer sighed and looked at me. "You did good. Don't be a stranger," he said, and then he was gone in a burst of flame. I looked at Celestia and wondered. "What now? So much has happened," I said, looking down. "We will carry on picking up the pieces." She looked at all the deaths that assisted in the fight. "Thank you all for your continued service." They all nodded and soon left with Tootsie's body. One held back and removed her hood, and to my surprise she was a changeling. "We'll make sure he's taken care of. We'll let you know when he'll be laid to rest," she said with a look of sorrow. I nodded my gratitude. They left through the door like deaths do. Celestia stood there beside me, and we teleported to her study once again, where Discord was still caring for Angel. Luna was there now and looked to her sister with worry. "What happened, sister?" she inquired. "I'll tell you later." Celestia insisted and looked at Angel Wings. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Much better, thank you, Your Highness," she said respectfully. "Good. They need all the help they can to repair heaven," Celestia said. Angel nodded and looked at me with a smile, and vanished in a blinding light, and I blinked the dots away. Discord scratched and yawned. "Haven't exerted myself like that since I fought the 2 sisters," he said jokingly. He popped in and had a fishing hat, and had a bunch of fishing tackle. "I need some R&R, he said chuckling. Celestia nodded and Discord was gone. I looked at Celestia, who looked just as haggard as I felt. "You best go and do your job. Death is always needed," she said. I smiled weakly. "I knew him for a day at most, but you knew him for 700 years. How does it hurt just knowing him?" I said, pulling back my hood. Celestia smiled softly and walked over to me, giving me a soft embrace. "He was just that kind of stallion," she said. I felt several more tears fall before I rubbed my eyes and put my hood back up. "I'll pop in from time to time," I promised and left the princess to talk. As I transported myself to the office, Apple Scroll stood there with a soft smile. "I have today's reaping," she said. I nodded. "Let's do it." Hello everyone, I'm sorry this one's late. I've already told you my schedule. It's not very pleasant. And for those that don't know, my big computer gone out, so I had to do all this on one of my smaller computers. And I figured out that the RAM cartridges on my big computer gone out exactly. So I had to switch out my 2 8GB RAMs for my 2 old 401s, so instead of having a 16, I have only 8GB RAM now, which is really upsetting to me, so it's gonna slow everything down. What else do I got here, other than that little bit of news? The story. Well, this is the last chapter, now is the epilogue after this one, so, yeah. There's not really that much to say about the story. I think it pretty well explains itself. So I'll see you all on Friday. It's been fun.